We're all set?
Okay.
I put the right folder this time.
Deputy Mayor?
This number here, this, where we're at currently?
Yes.
10.58?
Which one are you on, B, C, or D?
D.
We're at version D.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll give you a quick rundown of the realities of what we have to do. And then we can go from there as far as taking a look and see before we put the tentative in. Now, the number that you see in the SB column there is the tax cap number.
Okay.
Okay, so that was changed by about $3,000.
That's what we.
Where it says SB means should be,
That's what we need to get to.
yes.
3,053,000.
So, looking at the front page here, what you're looking at is the water fund and the sewer fund are largely balanced. That parentheses, those two parentheses numbers will be cleaned up. That's just, I wanted to get it down to $100 or less. We'll talk about, we did a little bit about wanting to pay more debt down with any additional funds and not put it in fund balance. So we'll talk about that. When you look at the bottom line number though, the total appropriations is 6.873504. Okay, that's for the whole budget, including special districts. The amount to be raised by taxes is 3,228,179. We have to be at 3,053,000 for a delta of approximately 170. Now we'll talk about some of the other things, and this is with the sweeper not in the budget. Okay?
That number, that 322?
3228 does not include funding for the sweeper.
Okay.
Okay, because remember last time I think it was like 3.4. So we essentially have to whittle down and find about $170,000. Now I've refined a lot of the budget. There's still a couple areas that I'm going to just look at a little bit more deeply to see if I can find a couple dollars here or there, but nothing significant. I might be able to change the numbers by maybe $10,000. The current rate per 1,000 is right now sitting at $10.58, which is essentially 60 cents above above the current number, which equates to about a 6% increase.
6% increase?
Yes, in your rate per thousand. 60 cents of $10. 6% of $10 is 60 cents.
Now with the tax cap, it's not the overall budget, it's the
It's
tax
just the
rate.
general fund. Just the part that's taxed. General fund and anything related to general fund.
But we've lost ratables, that's what I'm getting at.
That's factored in. If you look at the taxable assessed value, see the taxable assessed
Yeah.
value, 305,145, that's the adjusted down number from last year, which was,
So the general fund has the cap issue?
yes. Last year was 305,544, so about $400,000 decrease.
Okay, so that's all factored in.
Yes.
So you have to lose 60 cents, huh? Roughly?
Roughly. It's not exact because the rateable issue does dwindle a little bit, but it's a very small percentage. So if you look, your water fund is sitting at about $847,000. Your sewer fund's about 1.17 million. Your estimated revenues for the overall budget include 1.567 million of non-taxation, and that is sales tax money, utility, gross receipts taxes, fines and forfeited bail, and some of the other items that are much smaller as far as revenue sources. I did include the 65,000 that we were expecting to carry over for fund balance. But based on these numbers right now, you're probably in a tough spot to buy this truck unless we can find this money.
The 65,000 fund balance is already in these numbers?
Yes.
Oh, shoot.
Remember, you essentially have no taxation ability this year.
Are you saying,
Are you saying sweeper or truck?
that's what I was
Both.
saying, yes.
Truck for DPW, the sweeper for DPW.
I
The
know-
truck that fell apart, remember, the whole
Okay,
body
the
went?
dump truck is not in this number either?
The dump truck is in the 65,000 that I set aside
Okay,
Who wants the dump truck? Who wanted that?
Gary.
here.
Okay.
So the dump truck is essentially factored in, and the truck is in the number. Now, if I go into the line where the truck is, Gary, do you recall where you put that?
5110-2.
5110-2. Okay, yeah, there's $75,000. Now, if I drop that out, you are now at, you need to find $100,000. So the truck is in the budget right now. And I put the fund balance aside to anticipate that. Now, again, you could put more fund balance toward this budget, but again, it's also going to cut into the fund balance that you currently have. Now, because of your guys' determination to freeze spending to some degree, pay attention to overtime, that's gonna help. And we might end up with a little more, well, we will end up with a little bit more residual that will become fund balance. But
Did you get a
is
call?
100,000? I don't know, I don't think so.
Did you get a call tonight from Kevin?
Not that I, not
I
that,
did.
not that I saw.
Okay.
He said that the
The
was
Durango
not gonna
will
work.
not take care of the equipment that they need to haul around stuff.
Is that Kevin's truck in here also?
Kevin's
That's-
truck, I believe is, but
That's not
that's,
in the general fund, that's not gonna impact.
that's got,
Tax
we
cap.
can buy that.
Yeah, that's not.
We
gonna-
could buy a truck for water and sewer.
That's
What's he talking about, he doesn't want, the Durango doesn't fit his needs then, I'm confused. If he's gonna get the truck.
The idea, well, the idea was that instead of getting him the truck,
Uh-huh.
to give him the Durango and give a 10,000, 8,000 credit.
Are we talking about the police Durango that's gonna take $3,000 to
so.
rebuild the engine?
No, I don't think that's the one. I think
The
it
other
was the
one,
other
the
one.
steering problem.
It was the other one.
But that doesn't impact the general fund, is,
The general fund, with that scenario, would get a plus up of $8,000 to $10,000 because they would be paid for
oh,
that.
okay, all right.
So the general fund would benefit by having the Durango become part of the
Oh, yeah.
water
Okay.
department.
So they'd be buying that from. the-
Now, look, if you're in the water department, they had that old Cherokee. They're not too excited about getting hand-me-downs, especially since they are on their own 2 feet and the revenues are sufficient to be able to afford to get something new. But that's your guys' decision as to how you weigh that, okay? I could see an argument for both sides. One side could say, you know what, water, we really want to pay off the debt. So we really don't want to buy any equipment. So we can really kick money toward the debt. But on the other hand, you know, the water department's efficiencies coming in and so on are in addition to your decision to adjust the water rates to more reflect the costs, is making the water department able to stand on its own 2 feet. Remember, a couple of years ago, water department had to borrow around $100,000 last month of the year because they had to pay the payroll because they didn't have enough collections in May to make up the costs. But with the rates going up and you guys being able to get more revenue and the town coming online and contributing more to their water district, that's no longer a big issue. And what's going to happen is that you'll slowly start to see the water fund become stronger and stronger with a nice healthy fund balance, which is the goal. The problem with the general fund is that the state has tied your hands and has made it politically untenable to go up past the cap.
Can we, put the truck for the sewer plant off for 6 months? Take the credit we get, apply it, the 810, is it 8 or 10, what was the number?
Gary would probably need to give the board an estimate of what the Durango's worth, and then that would be a transfer between water to the A fund, which essentially would hopefully help out DPW, but it goes to the A fund, so it's whatever you do with it. You know, is a Durango worth $8,000?
I'd have to check Blue Book to see what the thing is even worth.
What year is it, Gary?
I
Don't know.
I was gonna say, that would help us with our cap situation, or at least, you know, get us in, some revenue into there.
Sure.
You're talking about the police department, Durango's, right?
I think they're 2008.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
2008, what is
There's
that?
2 of them bought in 2008.
7 years old, 8 years old, it may not have much value. What's it
Yeah,
after 7?
even if it's worth $5,000, you know, and then, you know, if you look at it, if the water department gets a year or 2 out of it, then it's worth it.
Who determines it, I mean, do you have to go by Blue Book value? I mean,
Reasonable
to,
to the auditors if they
okay,
question
all right,
it.
all right.
So if you're on the high end of Blue Book value, I think
You're
you
in trouble, you're not in trouble.
could, no. If
Well,
you
looking
set,
at that as a stopgap for a year, what was Kevin's objection to it? Why won't it fulfill the water department needs?
I don't know. I
He
don't-
said that to put the materials, chemicals and gasoline in there and everything else, it doesn't fit, doesn't work.
So they want an open pickup truck?
I'm just not
Well,
even
they have
telling
He
you.
wants to pick up.
They have an open pickup.
Oh, the Cherokee is good enough? The Durango?
I thought the Cherokee was really just for them to
Drive back.
to drive around,
Yeah.
meter
Yeah.
checks, all that stuff.
Yeah. Didn't he say that to you too?
Yeah, he mentioned, he said it wasn't much of, it's not a good fit. I think he said that as far as that vehicle for his use, but what happens if it's got some sort of value that, Blue Book value of $8,000, we kinda help go into the general fund with this, with our cap?
You do a transfer, you
Okay.
basically say that, okay, we're going to transfer an asset from the A fund to the F fund, and we believe that asset reasonably is worth $8,000. That asset goes to the water department, that's their machine, and the 8,000 comes from the water department into the A fund.
Right, and so, in 3 or 4 months from now, or 6 months from now, or depending on, however, if the truck is not a good fit, which we probably know that it may not be, at that point in time, they still have the revenue to buy.
Well, he's got a
the-
contingency fund, you
Yeah.
guys could make a mid-year determination, or I would say maybe not mid-year, maybe more toward the fall, well, fall is mid-year. And determine that you want to take some of the contingency to buy the vehicle. Their contingency, I think we set at either 75 or 100,000.
The water department has a much in contingency?
Yes, water department has 100,000.
100,000.
And again, that was with the understanding that our experience on West Point Highway with that water break was about $80,000. So this contingency essentially protects you from a large water or sewer problem. If you don't have that, then the money becomes fund balance or it can be used for a capital asset. So I think it would be reasonable to consider that the Durango goes to the water department. The expectation is they keep it for a year. And if there's problems with it prematurely that's unanticipated, you could consider buying a vehicle after that.
Is sewer allowed to loan to water or vice versa?
Sewer's allowed to loan water,
So
or
if we have
loan
a-
money.
If we have 100,000 contingency in both sewer and another 100,000 in water, if there's a major break.
Still covered.
We're covered.
You're still covered. And again, the vehicle is $35,000, so it's really 40% of your contingency, actually less, it's 35% of your contingency. So you're still pretty protected, but again, you know, you gotta be efficient with your assets, so it's a lot more difficult to, you know, well, we need a Durango, I think you have to be thinking in those terms. You know what? A-Fund needs some help.
Yeah.
The vehicle it's not ideal, but it is reasonable to replace the Jeep that they had.
What do we do with that vehicle? We salvage it, Gary, if in fact we don't repair it and send it to water?
The Durango?
Yeah.
Which one are you talking about?
The one that we had anticipated sending to water, is it the one with the
Which one's
motor?
that? They're both
Or
out of
the steering
service.
column?
One of them's out for an engine and the other's out for the steer and brake part.
We were gonna repair one of them, wasn't that the whole idea, and send it to water? I don't know which one it was.
Well, I think
though.
there was the one that had the clock spring problem. I think their idea was to try to repair that.
And the engine one,
The engine one's probably gonna, I don't see where buying a new engine for that old machine is reasonable. Cause again, a lot of things with crate engines, you know this,
I'm
it's a
just, yeah, I don't know where
50-50,
you are with it.
it's a 50-50 crapshoot. Putting a crate engine in there and whether or not it actually gives you a very long life.
Do we have an estimate of how much it's gonna cost to get the other one back up and running?
It's a matter of when they produce the part.
Yeah.
You can't get the part.
You were saying that, no anticipated time frame on that?
Well,
on that
here's the
part?
thing, you take the clock spring out of the other Durango and you put it in the one that we got.
We can try that.
Oh,
And we talked about it, except now you might have 2 broken clock springs. Of course, if you're not doing the engine, then it's worth a try. The clock springs, whatever, and I'm not the parts guy, I don't make them. And I went down and I talked to Mike Bosch about this. When you, for whatever reason, take those things out, they don't like it. Eddie Marvin told us the same thing, they actually have done other works on some of the cars and it messes the clock spring up. But it just happens that these Chrysler products, you can't get them. Evidently, they're so finicky, evidently, they can't keep up with production.
Can we anticipate
Well, I get, or
that plan?
or
and then-
swap the engine out of the other Durango and put it in the one that's got a good clock spring. You know, it's probably 15 hours of labor.
Are both vehicles in decent shape other than the 2 issues at hand? I mean, one needs a motor obviously, and the other one needs a clock spring. The body and the tires and everything else seems to be adequate? I mean, you think it's worth repairing, getting one vehicle out of the 2, Gary, regardless of which way you go?
Yeah, I would say definitely.
Can we use that as a plan going forward anyway, to wrap the budget up, and then if in fact it doesn't go as planned, then we'll be forced to buy a vehicle?
Well, we can try changing the clock spring, right, which may work. I took the one apart that's in the car that's down because of the clock spring. I actually took apart a couple weeks ago. And there's no spring in there, believe it or not, so how they even come up with the name, I have no idea. There's a disc in there and a board, you know, with resistors and all kinds of crap, but I got it to work about 80–85%, and then all of a sudden it would go off again. Being a police car, they can't put it on the road. It's an iffy situation if something happens.
But in the water department,
Well, it's no better there, God forbid to have that, but I also thought if we wanna try changing them, I know now that one of the things is you can't turn it. Once you take it apart, it turns. So I also now it's worth a try, you know, if we're not putting an engine in the car, which I guess you're not putting an engine in one car, do I understand that?
We're not sure yet which way we're gonna go with you. We're looking for some advice here.
If you're not doing an engine, it's worth trying to change the clock spring. I also know now I can take the 2 parts before I ever take it apart to keep it from turning. And hopefully with a 2-man job, one guy holding the thing,
Right.
part of the problem is once they turn.
What's the function of the clock spring?
handles,
It-
handles
it-
various things.
It tells, the two biggest things it does, and the problem we have with this car, it tells you if you're, turning the steering wheel, say 10 degrees,
Right,
but the car is turning it 30 degrees,
right.
it takes and releases the brakes.
Just like that
Picture.
anti-skid device thing.
Sorta, yeah,
It
yeah.
controls that?
Just a little worse.
Okay, all right.
But a lot of times too, it also controls cruise control, it controls the horn, it controls, some other gauges and stuff. So it depends on which car. I had a clock spring issue in a Dodge and I lost cruise control, I lost my horn, and I lost, some indicator light or something. Nothing that was, dangerous, but pain.
Your water and sewer are not on A, right?
Correct.
I'm just learning that. So they're gonna be a little more soluble than some of those that are on A.
Yeah, I look, I'll tell you, based on everything I heard, I'll tell you what I would recommend if, for what it's worth. I would find out how many miles are on the Durango that's got the good engine. That's really the
They
first
both have
question.
over 100.
Yeah, they're both over 100.
Yeah, but,
100, 112 each.
Yeah,
They're close.
they're within 10,000
Yeah.
miles of each other.
yeah, so, what's a reasonable expectation? Would we get another 20,000 miles out of the machine?
Should have gone.
The downside is you don't know what the transmission's gonna do, transfer
Has a
case,
police car?
differential.
No, water truck.
Oh,
Yeah. So, if it looks like the numbers make sense to put the 15 hours of labor or whatever into either swapping engines or swapping clock springs, and let's say, your cost is $1,500 to do that, to get a vehicle that's going to work for you for another year, it's worth it. And then you do the transfer payment between water and the A fund as to what the net value is of that machine. You have a mechanic on staff. Gary, is a mechanic capable of doing an engine swap or a clock spring job? I know you are, but I'm not sure you're gonna have the time.
Yeah, I think we can do it. The only thing, if we can change the clock spring and it works, then why don't we just leave it as a police car for a year? The water department, other than the few years they've had the Jeep, have gone for years with one vehicle.
Which is one vehicle.
Well, the police should get a new vehicle anyway, right? We have that budget.
Yes.
because they just went 2 down.
Yeah.
So we're down 2, and then the new vehicle we gained 1 was still down 1.
Well, but you guys were discussing also use of the other vehicle.
Oh, sure. But still.
If we
Yeah,
were
one of those
to
Durangos we're gonna do.
change out the police vehicle for water, wouldn't that also mean having to paint the vehicle? So to
No,
know.
we just take some of it, we take the decals off it.
Oh,
My question was, those who are not in A fund, they can loan money to A fund.
no, only sewer
Only
and water.
special districts
See.
can loan to each other.
But see, that's not fair. Because that's, oh wait, let me finish.
Welcome
Let me
to,
finish.
welcome to where I was 2 years
The
ago.
Because-
the reason why it's like that, Brian,
Yeah.
is because one's taxation, the other's fee-based.
I understand that. But-
And it was abused for
But-
many years.
But my issue is, you're basically penalizing other people because they're on A and sewer and water is not.
Well, no, it's purely a taxation issue.
All right, but shouldn't it be that they work as a team?
No,
So if
because
you're screwed up, then you
Well,
can just say,
I think,
okay.
I think
it's your
Charlie's,
turn.
I think Charlie's hit it on the head. What was happening is it's very difficult to enforce because you have to pay back the money. If you're borrowing money from the water department into the A fund, it could go years before anybody catches it or audits it.
Okay,
And it becomes an untenable situation. If you make it no, it can't be done under any circumstances, the auditors will find that.
okay. I was just thinking, if somebody needs something and someone is soluble, just take the money out and float it, let the.
I think it's unfair that the residents are paying for water and sewer, and we can't interfund and move it around. But that's law.
Yeah, that's what he just said.
Right, I think it's
It is what it is, but still, I like the idea of that $8,000 going to,
Yeah, that's a
Well, general
legitimate
fund, I just mean-
transfer.
and,
Oh,
It'll
yeah.
all go in one pool.
It's taxation
I guess-
versus
I know,
fees.
it's-
You know, think about the water department. In some villages, not
Great minds
everybody,
think alike.
not everybody gets water and sewer service. So could you imagine those villagers who are paying for water and sewer service and money's getting moved into the general fund, and that's helping people that aren't paying for it?
Mm.
So it becomes a little bit of a problem controlling.
Okay.
can it please go up one car down for a year? Until the next budget? I mean, is
If the
that,
foot patrol becomes a standard,
Yeah, but
I don't know.
with police, we had money in reserve.
Yeah, but like you said,
Yeah,
it's
but we're
only
using
one
that
down.
to get the new car.
Right, one new car.
right, but.
But you
again,
go
we-
from
we're-
7 to 5 and then we're going up to, you're going up to 6, you're still down a car.
But
So
that's what
then
I'm
use
asking.
somebody else's car and go, let them have something
You're
else.
still down a car.
what's
No
the
matter what car you
metric?
move around,
Yeah,
it's
but
still right
here's my question, what is the metric that determined that the police need 7 cars?
That's-
What was that determined?
Don't know.
There's 5
That-
cars, there's 5 cars being used to patrol. There's 9 shifts a day. 1 car is gonna be used 24 hours in a row. The car's gonna blow up. I mean, the
No,
car's-
but how many cars are used at on any given shift?
2 at the least.
So 2 cars are used a shift, so there's 3 shifts, right? And you're saying that a car only works 8 hours?
No, I mean, optimally you would like a car to rest 8 hours
Okay,
at least.
okay, so each car runs 16 hours, 2 shifts, so that's 48 hours, that's 3 cars, plus 2 backups. So I'm still
5
trying to
cars is
understand
good
where
the way it
the
is right
7,
now.
yeah, so where's 7 car
Well, one's a
requirements
detective
come from?
car, one's the chief's car.
I guess, can we
Either
go-
way, no matter what car gets used,
You're still one
the
down.
chief's gonna have a car and the detective's gonna have a car.
Is that by law, chief and detective?
Not by
have
law. I mean, every chief in the world has a car.
No, a chief I understand, but detectives required to have a car? In-
Required? No, but, I mean, if you have a crime and he needs to,
Or she.
he or she, yeah, sorry.
Your-
Normally a
Your
detective has a car.
problem now, Ed, isn't really the number of your cars. That's something you can look at down the road. The problem now is the condition of the whole fleet.
And it's- I know it's
Yeah,
aging.
Even if you took 2 of those
So
cars
much.
right now and said, you know what, junk them. You get down to 5 cars, you still got the same problem right now.
Yeah.
Is the
Your-
rest of the cars-
Your cars that are your patrol cars that are on the road all the time, they're at the end of their life expectancy.
Yeah, right now you have 3 patrol cars on the road right now. Those cars are almost running 24 hours a day.
Well, you're running.
Right. I mean,
3 cars are running 24 hours a day?
yeah, you have 3
Well-
people on.
There are 3 people on a shift?
I'm not, I haven't looked at the
So you
schedule.
have two patrol and one
Mostly 2.
detective in the morning.
Yeah, they're-
Don't count the detective, he has his own car. It'll just your uniform, fucking uniform. Even if you have 3 cars for 2 officers, you're still running 16 hours a day. After a while, it catches up. The car's running 16 hours in a row, the cars aren't made to do that.
Do we have enough time to go a year until the next budget to get the extra car?
I'm not sure.
I'm wondering.
Well, as Gary said, if you're able to get the clock spring to work,
Right, well, I
then
believe
you've got
in-
one
believe in
Durango
police.
and you've got one replacement police car. And then if that turns out to be the result, then the water department, if the board feels the water department needs another vehicle, then could allow the water department to get another vehicle. I do think it's probably a fair question, does the water department need another vehicle? I didn't see if it was represented what the purpose was. There is one vehicle in the water department right now, and there's 3 employees there.
Right,
So what's the vehicle for, meter reading?
I'm not sure.
Oh, Bog Meadow metering, leaks, let's say somebody's got a vehicle out and they're on a leak or something like that, and then you still need to maybe get running around for a department. I'm thinking,
Cool.
I just don't know if, in fact, we're better suited to put that extra vehicle in water or in
There's only
police
2, right?
rotation.
Kevin has one, and then the water department has one,
If you're
right?
gonna repair it.
The water department had the Cherokee, that was the old Cherokee.
Yeah.
But again, I'll say this, I really think maybe after budget, that the board should consider suitability of vehicles. Do these departments need all these vehicles? Is there something in in the contracts for water and sewer that says that these department heads are required to have a vehicle at all times? Or is the vehicle supposed to be at the water department available and not necessarily one that's gets taken home? Again, you know,
It's in the
obviously,
supervisor's contract.
is it in the contract? Okay, so if it's in the contract, then you pretty much, you have what you have. But then the question is, do you need the additional vehicle? Is there enough need in these departments for the vehicle?
We haven't met with the supervisors yet, have we?
No.
What, contract-wise?
Mhm.
Oh, no. Yeah, they don't seem to be very motivated on bringing it up.
Well, would you?
It depends what your strategy is.
I think a good one is not bringing it up. You know what I mean? I mean.
I know why. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that
Uh,
it's one of the rare occasions where
Nobody's
there isn't a
anxious to get to the
desire.
table.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
A reverse verb.
I just wanna make sure that we weren't asked, you know, because if nobody said anything, so I think that there's a.
It's like a reverse
that I know
verb
of.
situation.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, the numbers are what the numbers are, and you certainly would be able to get a little benefit. It's not huge. $5,000 to $8,000 is not a big. You know, when you're looking for $175,000, you know, that's not a big piece. But I guess maybe the suggestion of trying to make it a police vehicle by fixing a clock spring probably makes sense. And then you can leave the request for a vehicle in the water fund, but just not approve it until you feel that it's been demonstrated that it's needed. I think it's very fair to ask these departments, especially in this austerity now, you know, demonstrate the need, and the need has to be over 50% of the time.
What was said at the last meeting to the water? You gonna get a
It
truck?
didn't go that far. There was a discussion about it, and then Kevin said he would come up with some numbers for a vehicle.
I thought he did too, didn't he?
Yeah, he did send an email, I think it was $36,000. But I just don't know if there was enough put on the table about why this new vehicle is needed. And again, can the water department afford a new vehicle? It can. But it's at the expense of accelerating debt service payments.
Okay, I have a note to myself that water is short a vehicle. But we were planning on putting 10,000 in a
But again,
reserve.
that water is short a vehicle because they're saying that the Cherokee that they had was considered part of their vehicle plan.
Well, our numbers right now include 10,000 for a reserve for a vehicle.
The water department has, I believe, 10,000 in and 10,000 available to be put in if the board decides by the end of the year. And then we budgeted 10,000 for next year. And technically, what you could do is you could say, you know what, we're gonna budget 10,000 for next year, and that's when you can get another vehicle, if you determine that that's, you know,
Needed.
needed.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what we did with the police, so it's fair.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out if we did in fact put the vehicle in the water department. We had put $10,000 into equipment, with the understanding that we would use the other 20,000 from the reserve fund, plus 10,000 in the reserve, and that gives you $40,000. Yeah, so you can see if the Durango, is still suitable for the police department after the Public Works reviews it and determines its suitability. And if it's suitable, then it stays in police. If it's not suitable, then it goes to the water out of transfer payment. Seems pretty reasonable. But for budget purposes,
Should I call Kevin?
I don't know if you need a decision right now.
I mean, I just wanted to know if you wanted to leave that 8 in there.
I think that if you had the, who's the water liaison? if you contacted Kevin and you just talked to him about it and have him explain to you the justification of it, you know, he might, he might be justified, you know, I find hard to believe that he asked for something he doesn't think he needs, but the department manager's position of need and the board's suitability question might not be on the same page. So, okay. All right, so,
Look like storm sewers.
yes.
That's actually physically storm sewers? Wouldn't that one be under street?
It is part of, it's a specialized area of streets. One's administration, the other's actually the physical. You got street maintenance, you have street administration, which is Gary's street administration. Street maintenance is your salary, and then storm sewers, is, if I recall, is no salary, just contractual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just funding
For storm sewers?
for the storm drain system, right, Gary? Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, for pipe and also for the cleaning truck. You could lump it all in streets, it just gives you a better idea what the
Right.
money is for breaking it down.
Now, if you don't buy the truck, which I know Gary would love to be able to get, but if, I'm just putting this out there because you have to find the money.
Let me tell you something. The truck is like, we can put this truck off. It's a third vehicle. Came in very handy this year because the other truck broke down. We had issues, so. But you also have to remember, the next truck in line is an '03. So you can.
So there's nothing newer than an '03?
Yeah, there's one 2013.
Oh, there is, okay.
Basically, in snow removal, actually in 52 weeks a year, you need two small dumps in order to, and then with the pickup truck in order to bring, you can't go with one.
And these are 1 tons, Gary? Are they 1 tons or?
The 2013's at 550.
Okay.
But the Chevy that I wanted to replace this year, my point is, the only thing we have on it now is the spreader we put on it because the dump body was shot. I mean, we can hang on to it for another year. It became a very good backup truck this winter, and we can let it go. It's not like it's getting a lot of miles. You can take that out, and if it goes a year, I wouldn't put any big money in it. If a transmission went out of it, I wouldn't invest $3,000 in it.
Are
It's
we
at that
talking
point.
dump truck?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do any major repair.
You know,
on it.
the other thing you could put on is that we'll have a lot better idea of our fund balance going into next year, probably like midsummer. We'll have a good idea of where fund balance is. You know, I'm still waiting on the auditors. I still won't have anything from them, but I think they're very backed up, which is part of the problem. If it turns out that the fund balance is a little bit stronger than anticipated because of the austerity you guys kicked in toward the end of this year, then you could increase the fund balance contribution and get the truck mid-year without it being in the budget. You could do a budget adjustment because you observe that your fund balance is stronger than anticipated, and you could then resolve to buy the truck through a resolution.
You know, it's interesting that he's here tonight. No offense, no offense. Let me finish my sentence. He's giving us ideas about the trucks and what they are. I'm amazed, and this is my first time in a budget, that we go through these budgets so quickly for the departments, and yet I can't see why at department head meetings you say to somebody, you're the first half hour, you're the second half hour, and you bring people in, you have these discussions.
Sure.
It's basically bam, wham, thank you, ma'am. You go through it real fast, and then everybody gets it, and then there's really no input like we're having tonight from him. There's gotta
Yeah,
be a way of
but
getting
that's-
that information.
But that's the board can make this a bigger exercise or smaller exercise based on your comfortability
Well,
with the
instead of
situation.
using bigger or smaller, use a tighter or a more formal way. Because it appears at times that we agree to something and it's like, you look at department heads saying, oh, by the way, we voted on this. Well, if he wasn't here, we wouldn't have the information that he just gave us.
No,
Okay.
and, yeah, we're.
But you're not voting on anything right now.
I understand
This is
that,
still,
but-
this is a very fluid
Right, but
document.
it's still the idea of, I think we ought to address the department heads more often than just that one time with the
Oh,
budget setting
oh,
goes real
yeah,
fast.
Oh, yeah, I think the liaison scenario too.
Yeah.
That conversation.
Yeah, they could meet together. It doesn't have to be the whole board. The liaison could go with that.
Prior to the budget time, yeah.
Do
that-
you
that's
know what
good.
I'm saying now?
I know what you're saying.
Because to me, it looked like
Look,
it goes too fast.
I was contacted by one department head, actually, I did talk with Gary not informally. I was contacted by one department head and he didn't show up when we had the meeting. So, you know,
I understand. I understand.
Does that sound like a deal that it would be, what we just spoke about, maybe the truck halfway through the summer, depending on the balance?
What,
Did you-
my truck?
The dump
What's at the
The
dump truck?
dump truck?
Yeah,
Well, I'm more interested in knowing where we're going with the sweeper.
yeah.
I think that some kind of answer with the sweeper is more important than that dump truck at this
Is it
point.
really, well, I don't think that it's not in there.
Well, I'm not talking about a new sweeper. I knew we weren't buying a new
Yeah.
sweeper when I put the number down.
Yeah.
You shoot high.
can you contract out 3 or quarterly sweeper and have somebody do it?
It's not gonna work for us, Ed. The problem is with the sweeper, part of it we use for water, for doing water
Pump it
repair.
out.
I can't schedule water leaks. The sweeper, other than the deep catch basins, we clean catch basins with it. You know, that sweeper with that back, and that's why we bought that type with that overhead vacuum on it, is a very handy piece of equipment.
And is it hard
No.
down completely now? It's not, doesn't drive?
No, we used it today.
Oh, okay.
But my problem, we can down, you know, if there's any money left ahead for the engine in that sweeper, and it'll buy probably another 3 or 4 years out of it. You know,
Really?
again, barring, I'm not the guarantee
Right,
man.
barring anything else.
Engine changes are 50-50 games, I think.
Well, the engine change, and that's not so bad. You're talking about the sweeper engine in the back. The truck engines, the Cummins engines got very.
Oh, the truck engine's fine, it's a sweeper engine
Yeah,
that's the
it's a
issue? Oh,
sweeper
okay.
engine. That's our problem with it, the back end.
What was the cost of that to,
I put a number of 40,000 I was looking for, which is probably an inflated number. It needs some more, a couple parts underneath.
that's another one where if the numbers, the fund balance is better than expected, you guys could consider that mid-year.
Well, I would much rather look and keep plugging along with it now and look at that sweeper engine before I would look at that truck mid-year.
Okay.
But I think you also need to be prepared for a truck next year. Now the 03 Ford, I just put it, I don't know if you saw the bill yet. The engine bill on that was over $8,000 for the repairs on that diesel engine.
Well, in terms of budgeting right now, should we be putting 20 to 40,000 in reserve for truck equipment?
You don't have the money.
Well, the 75,000 is currently in there, right?
No.
No, it's
I
not?
thought-
The truck is in here,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but I already put the fund balance in there too.
Oh, that's true.
So if I remove the truck, you go down to trying to find $110,000.
Which isn't there.
The truck basically is out for this year unless halfway through the year.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
We can do an evaluation of fund balance position mid-year, and then, you know, again, if,
That truck now, the only thing on it's a sander. That truck, once we're out of this month, basically is gonna
It's gonna
sit.
park.
you got
It's gonna
6
sit there
months,
for a bit.
6 months
So
to
you-
play with.
Yeah.
Is there a plow on it? There's a little plow on it.
Can
Look,
we
spread
find
it.
some money to at least look into getting the motor on the sweeper repaired?
Not repairing that engine.
Oh.
That's
New one?
bad money.
Okay.
That engine was a problem and it was rebuilt once already.
that a gas motor in the back, or is that a?
No, it's diesel.
It's a diesel also?
Again, a lot of what's gonna help you is, strong department head management of manpower hours and overtime. That's your biggest, again, as we found, we had a good year for snow removal issues, we saved a lot of money, and that money can get recirculated back into other needs. Now, that is not completely controllable, because you have to depend on less snowstorms to get some of that back. But, again, consistently, the use of overtime should be very, very, very strongly scrutinized. Okay, now I noticed communications overtime went down a little bit, but you're still, you're still running into needs to use your most senior people for OT.
As long as the philosophy is part-time people have the right to say no, you gotta fill in those spaces, you don't have a choice.
But again, as we talked about with the discussion about the third shift, that will give you some relief.
Did you see the, maybe you didn't.
I'm talking about police.
Yeah,
Those-
communication.
those-
Yeah.
Third shift 911.
No, I'm talking about
Is
the
there an
police.
update?
Yeah, it was,
Every
I
time
think the
the police
things with,
overtime. Fine.
the problems with not having dispatcher on the third shift, there was
Oh,
some
see,
stuff that was emailed down.
As of
later
now-
tonight when I get in.
Okay.
There's a series of
Much
things to
more
to be
address,
done.
yeah.
Kind of
So-
on par with.
Charlie,
last
did you get
year.
that email?
I didn't get the email, I have a hard copy that Ken distributed.
Okay, it had all the 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, yeah.
I have a question, I have lots of questions, so forgive me.
No,
I
that's
didn't
what
get
we're
that
here
hard
for.
copy.
Let's say there's a liaison, let's say I'm his liaison. I still don't understand the economics of it, so if we're talking about something, how do we get the information that the liaison can speak in a rational manner? I mean, how would I get those numbers?
Well, the only numbers you really need as far as payroll is that why is overtime needed? Now, with DPW, it's kinda easy, like I asked the question, oh yeah, there's a break, there's a water line break, there was something else. As long as it's all backed
You
up,
know,
I did not.
he
Right,
said
I'm
email.
talking about with his, let's say he wants equipment. If he calls in and says, Brian, come down to the garage, bring coffee, of course. What, I want this equipment. I need to know how much money we got to give him to have a rational conversation about equipment.
if you wanna sit down and talk through it, we can meet on an evening or
Okay.
something, absolutely.
So we could do that,
Sure,
okay.
sure, but it really.
I just don't think we should be making some of the evaluations without more input from the department heads. For me
No, but
anyway, because I don't know what the hell I got, what they don't
But the
have.
department heads are in charge of, their payroll, so they have to manage it. If they don't understand, they should be asking questions. If they're not asking questions, it's assumed that they're managing it. They're being paid to manage the payroll. That's part of their compensation.
I'm talking about equipment. Equipment I'm talking about.
About buying equipment?
Yeah, I didn't know he had an 03. I mean, if I were to talk to him about it, he says, Brian, I need A, B, C, and D. I can't make a decision then, because I don't know how much money that we have to put in.
Well, I don't think the department heads have any issues really with the equipment they need to know, what they need. I think they might not know the numbers right away, but that isn't intuitive. It's not gonna be
Okay.
something you're gonna know right away.
All right.
But, because look, the other thing you can consider is next year or at some point borrowing for capital equipment. It's kind of a last resort, but it's becoming more and more in the tax cap world, becoming more and more of an option. Because,
Well, do you really have a choice when you got 03s and 08s around there? I mean,
no, you
How much
inherited,
money can you keep dumping into those damn things?
you inherited a situation where there wasn't really a plan.
right. But, so we're saying that
And
we're
you're trying
agreeing.
to do a plan, but you're trying to do a plan where the state's basically said that, you know what? There's no increase, you gotta do with what you have, but you still have to follow the contracts.
Right.
You still have to follow collective bargaining. You still have to follow the fact that health insurance is going up 5 to 10% a year.
I understand. I understand.
So, yeah, it's an untenable long-term situation. And ultimately, what's happening is that they are, municipalities are borrowing before raising the cap fact, because if they raise the cap or go over the cap, people don't get the rebate check. And that becomes a big problem. As small as it is, the $80 or $100 or whatever it comes out to being, you know, there's a lot of people that's not small. That's significant to their you know, yearly income. And that's important to them, so it's a very tough spot. So if you want to rely on a evaluation of fund balance mid-year to determine whether or not you can do anything with capital equipment, then that might be the best way to go, and then drop the truck off, and, you know, have a serious consideration about trying to find another 50,000 and then increase your fund balance by 50,000. You can afford to put another 50,000 of fund balance into the budget, but it's not gonna help your long-term goal of maintaining it.
Well, what are we gonna do about the sweeper engine? Are we going to put money in the budget for that, or
You
use?
don't have the money. You can wait until, we get fund balance numbers
Mid-year.
mid-year or 3 months from now. You know, we should know
Mm.
more in June timeframe, June, July. And then determine if you can afford to do a fund balance, do a budget adjustment and pay for it with fund balance.
Do we have any other options?
Borrow money.
Yeah.
Do we get money
Yeah.
from sewer since?
We can set up, you know, here's the other thing, we have a band coming up next March. We can start to set up through the year and set up the new band, because this band is going to, the new band has no A-fund debt in it. Okay, so the band that's out there right now has no A-fund debt. All your A-fund debt is in long-term
Serial.
borrowing. So with the heavy contributions you're making for water and sewer bands, you're technically gonna drop the band number from 970 down to maybe 600,000. You could plus it up and offer another note with 300,000 in A-fund borrowing for capital equipment.
And we could do that mid-year.
No, that would be March,
Okay.
next March.
Okay.
How much would that change our payment? Not all, just won't go down?
No, your A-fund will incur probably maybe a $30,000 to $40,000 commitment, but you'll have the capital goods. And your net debt will continue to still be going down, because you're paying off more aggregate debt. Your A-fund debt will go up, but your A-fund debt was horrible when you guys took office. So it's not like, you know, and you've been paying it down. You know, Web Lane Bridge is gone, so that's a little bit of money there. But you're benefiting from Web Lane Bridge because Web Lane Bridge isn't in the budget.
If the sweeper does work for the sewer and for water, how come they can't put money into that machine in the back, that motor in the back?
They have to charge it. They have to charge it over. If Gary can come up with a allocation that says that the sweeper is used 25% for the sewer department, 25% for the water department, you can allocate a transfer payment for that. But it has to be back, you gotta be able to back it up. You can't just say, well, it's on reserve or on standby to do it. If we can set up and allocate at least 5%, then yeah, you can ask those departments to contribute to the repair. But that's gotta be allocated, and somebody's gotta do that. Somebody's gonna have to account for that.
And
And
all
then
that
turn
kind
in
of
a budget
financing
transfer.
ultimately brings up water rates, you know, so it's, you know, we keep throwing stuff at water and sewer too, and the impact is spread across, you know, we're not getting any further ahead.
Well,
But
there's,
don't we have room in water and sewer?
yeah, but that's not an argument. The room is irrelevant. What's relevant is that if there are activities that are going on by A fund departments on behalf of the sewer department,
And water.
and they're not captured, then the A fund is being not,
Yeah.
it's being cheated
Yeah,
to some
but you
degree.
brought this up before. You said before, when I first came on, that from now on, when someone does something with sewer or water, they have to, we're gonna start charging them.
Mhm.
That's all I'm suggesting.
No, and that's a great plan, except if we're gonna get creative with it into the cost of a gallon of water, ultimately, a year or two from now, after we acquire some long-term debt, or dump it off on, the water and sewer, it will be back in here raising rates, you know?
Yeah, I think, if you cost the benefits that the F and G fund get, like, I still think they're undercosted. You could probably squeeze out another 5% out of each of those departments for activities that are done by the A fund on behalf of the F and G fund. But somebody's gotta track it. Somebody's gotta put it down. The water department head he's not motivated to get a transfer to happen that hurts him. Okay?
But doesn't the sewer department in their report to the board, they do make notation of how many hours were devoted to helping other departments? So that is.
Yeah, but the sewer department helping other departments isn't helpful in this discussion. That actually hurts the A fund.
Oh, it's gotta go the other way.
Yeah.
So it's back on DPW helping,
But we're
Yeah.
doing that now with the water, we're gonna do that with the water jobs.
Right,
Can we,
that's my point.
Ryan's original
Yeah.
point was the diesel motor on the back of the sweeper that does the jet vac. Is that something that we could kind of, possibly,
We'll have to wait till we get all those water jobs done and then look at a percentage.
Yeah, it's, again, if it's used 5% or more, it's probably worth costing it. In the accounting world, it's called activity-based costing, and you can activity-based cost down to a paperclip. But is it worth the manpower to get it down to a paperclip? Right? You're paying somebody $40 an hour or whatever. At a certain point, there's diminishing returns. But for purposes of A fund, there is a natural progression that now that you're under a tax cap, that everything that the A fund does on behalf of others, including the town, right? So if you look, the town, if there's reciprocating relationships where if the town's using a sweeper, the town loans one of their pieces of equipment to the village and there's a barter system, that's fine. But if like the town uses a sweeper and the village doesn't get anything in return, you're gonna have to start identifying that and getting some type of value for it. And I don't know if do we borrow anything from the town, Gary?
bucket truck probably, right?
Bucket truck, paver when we do in-house paving, which isn't a lot.
So there is a bartering going on that's reasonable
The
for
chipper,
utilization on both sides.
we don't own a chipper, the town does, we use their chipper whenever we do that.
Okay, so there you have a wash then between the two
It's
departments.
not worth,
We
I
don't-
don't think
we
it's worth getting into that with
Right.
the town.
We don't play with the school at all, with the equipment?
It's just like the school has
We
their
did
own,
that. We made money up at Niskuna. We traded off.
school has their own garbage service too.
Yeah, right. I mean, we used to make sure we could plow them out and stuff like that, and our town of Niskuna made money on that. If you're talking about financial, that department heads are responsible for finances, you made that statement, right? Well, if I'm in water and I got busting pipes and I got this and I'm using his stuff, then guess what? Your job is to put down how much time we got used.
Right.
That's why
Again-
you make the money
Again,
you make.
the department head's financial responsibilities is to properly schedule their employees, know what their cost structure is for their employees, and know what money they have for buying contractual items. They don't really need to know much more than that, but if they're capable of balancing those two things, then they're gonna contribute to the overall financial picture. To the benefit of the department heads, most of them have never been taught any of this. And so they're not completely on the hook as far as being expected to produce because they really haven't you know, there've been the conversations with them and so on recently, but I don't think they've really gone through any type of payroll management slash expense management guidance.
Well, with the tax caps, it's essentially a tax freeze.
Yeah.
It's gonna become more and more necessary.
Sure, sure, you know, absolutely, and that's why the efficiency program was introduced also.
Right.
Because there's an expectation that the only way you're gonna be able to keep your budgets going without a tax cap vote against the tax cap is to share municipal services.
Right.
And,
Which includes schools.
correct.
Right.
Absolutely. So, you know, these are things to consider going forward, and again, fund balance is certainly something that we can evaluate, you know, as we go into the year, the new budget season. And you can, technically, you have enough fund balance to subsidize the rest of this budget. But I just
But
don't
it'll wipe it
think I
out.
wanna well, it just makes it low for comfortability, you know, you wanna be at 500 or above, okay? You know, as I mentioned, our numbers in our last audit, the unassigned fund balance for the general fund was 519,508.
What year was that last year?
This was for fiscal year ending of 14,
Okay.
okay? So this is almost 2 years old information.
If in fact we got under the cap with this, where would our fund balance be going into this fiscal year?
Well, I don't, see, my problem is I don't have the new audit yet, so I don't have the official numbers. I do believe that our fund balance is probably in the high fours.
Staying under the cap?
No, it's in the high fours before we execute this budget.
Okay.
Now, I'm anticipating that with the freezing that's been going on and so on, that maybe this budget kicks 150, including the snow removal, toward fund balance.
Mhm.
So we could balance the budget by putting another 200,000 toward fund balance this year, but we're going to cut into, and I don't think we'll be north of 500,000. Again, I'm kind of guessing because I don't have those numbers yet.
If we're gonna hold people responsible, department heads,
Okay.
for doing certain things, then you gotta give them the skills to do it. We just can't sit here and piss and moan that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Summertime is not a bad time to do it, or the beginning of fall, and get people used to it. Well, I never, know- we never had to do that, I hear that when I wrote the 5% on overtime. Well, you know, we never had to do that.
But the village wasn't under a tax cap before. Tax cap kicked in 3 years ago.
Right, I understand that.
So they just increased taxes.
Right.
You know, oh, you're over, remember that graph that,
Yeah.
Chief Scott put out there?
Yeah.
You looked at those overtime numbers years ago, $120,000?
Yeah.
Well, that was going on because there wasn't anything restraining it,
I understand that.
okay? So, when somebody says, well, we never had to do that before, well, because there really technically wasn't a awareness enough to have a need, right? Because the public was like, oh man, my taxes went up 4%, you know, what can I do? You know, it's the government. They didn't have anything to be able to restrain that other than the voting booth, right? With the tax cap now, you have to look at that stuff.
I understand that, and whether the tax cap comes back again or not, they ought to have that skill as a department head, whether there's a tax cap or not.
Sure.
Know how to do it.
So
Don't
how do you
miss,
give them the skill?
you have workshops during the summer, and you bring in your department heads.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's how we did it in the school district, and I know people say, oh, he's always bringing up the school district. Didn't matter. If you,
There's
if
no
you,
difference.
business.
if you were head of, in a building, You either better do what you're gonna do, or you lost it the following year. It was that simple.
I'll give you at least something. Okay, I'll get back when you guys are done.
Ed's gonna look up some numbers. Want to take want to handle some business on the
Yeah.
roof?
Sure.
Did everybody see these two proposals for the roof repairs?
Yep.
One was from Boss Construction and one was from McCarthy Carpentry. The one proposal was $16,200 from Boss, and there was additional work done on McCarthy's, and it brought it to $16,725. I asked Mr. McCarthy what it would be if he backed that out, and he said 700 hours less on a phone call when we got this at the last meeting. So that would have brought Mr. McCarthy to $1625 and the Boss at $16,200, which was really close bidding, and I'm impressed. I just wanna see if we can hire this and get this moving along before we have any more
Yeah.
damage. And so do I have a motion to
They're
hire?
both doing the same job?
Yes, yeah, I read that, the high-density board, they're doing the membrane, the drip edge, and then they're going over it. New seamless gutters, and they're pretty similar, if you look at the two proposals. I don't know if you saw them.
Motion to accept Mr. McCarthy's bid?
Second.
Are you ready, Anthony?
Just hold on a
I
second.
don't know if
Yeah.
I gotta go along with you. Okay.
Good?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing, there was an add-on for $750 to give 5 years more for warranty on that rubber, the roof, but we're not exercising that option. One didn't have it, so the other one did. And that would add, for additional 5 years. I'm sure that if, in fact, it's available we can ask Jack when it comes for it to add that on, but that wasn't in that proposal from Boss.
But the manufacturer provides
10
10
year,
years?
10 year, because I called and asked it, because I just wanted to make sure that in fact we were talking about the same material. All right,
Yeah.
you all set?
Yep.
So I have a motion, second,
Brian seconded it. Charlie made the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'll let him know, or Gino, or anything.
Do you have his number?
It's on, it's on,
McCarthy,
Okay.
it's here.
I'll make the call because Pat wanted me
It's a good idea.
to do the thing, and that way it takes it
Oh.
off Gina's plate. That was the agreement, that I would start doing more work.
about time.
Gina runs a tough shift, I tell you.
Yeah.
Why do you hurt people's feelings, Anthony? You know that old
You
song?
waited till I started drinking just to do that, didn't you?
Always hurt the one. Yeah, I'll take responsibility for it, all right? And then I'll call the chief.
Leave the executive session matter to the end of the budget meeting. Okay. Then I'll wait for Ed on this, to see what he's got.
Is that all right with you if I do it? Okay. And then I'll call the chief and let him know we're gonna get moving.
He'll have paperwork to fill out, he'll have to come here to do
Not
it.
that I want to, does anyone see
McCarthy.
anywhere else who cut?
And his insurance, yeah.
I'll tell him to see you, but I'll make the call.
All right, I'll
I
talk to you
don't.
after.
I don't, but
Well,
that's just me. I'm looking, I mean,
not huge cuts. I
No,
don't see
yeah.
some sweeping
Thank you.
thing, but, nibbles here and there.
right, it was isn't gonna make up on it, but no.
Well,
2 years of his salary. will-
10 nibbles,
You don't know.
$282,
That was a good article.
yeah,
What's that?
$282,000 fund balance.
scary. but-
Now?
That's what I'm saying.
That's
Trained.
prior to the end of this fiscal year. Again, this is AUD, there's gonna be some adjustments to it, but I'd say 300,000 is probably a fair number.
Okay.
After the 205 that was contributed to the last budget,
So we're down to
about
300,000?
300.
So
Now-
we're well below 5% of budget.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, again, the first year you guys used 240. This year you used 205. And right now you're at 65. But that 65 is covered, so it's not gonna send the fund balance down, because you're gonna get it
Carry-
from
Some
the
carryover.
carryover. I would suspect that if you move that to 150,000, your fund balance for this year will probably be in the 300 range.
You had questioned what the going percentage is for fund balance.
There's no number.
I did read in one of Dinopoli's reports that for schools, it's 4%.
Yeah. The OSC won't commit to a number, but, so you say 5% of your, annual outlays.
So if we take that 150, you said,
I'm sorry? If you made that 150
you said it's still.
and you
around-
drop the truck,
Yeah.
then you wouldn't have to make it 150. You would have to make it, let's see, drop the truck. You need 175. Truck.
You're talking about the 75 dump truck.
Yeah, so if we take the 75 out of there, then we're at, raised taxes 150, so we need 100,000. So you'd have to make that, 165. If you drop the truck and do nothing else.
Mhm.
And that 100 will maybe impact your fund balance by 25 to 50,000. So you might be at a 250 fund balance. Off of a total spending package for the A fund of 5 million. So that's about 5%.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people in the field that I talk to kind of feel like 10% is better. Better metric.
Yeah, I'd feel better, I don't know, somehow 5 doesn't seem like,
A whole lot.
you know.
Although,
Problem is, I don't see $100,000 to take out of here.
I don't think you have a choice.
Well, again, you still have some payroll stuff to look at. Are you guys comfortable with the police department's payroll number? Are you comfortable with, the,
attorneys,
well, attorneys really have no room there.
Well, for one we do.
I didn't even build that in.
that's not in this budget?
It's mixed between Goldberger and that.
Yeah, and we're going into police
You've got
at some point
12,000.
in time, so I think Brian's bill is gonna be,
You've got 12,000 for those two things. And again, we can, if you want to do exec section, discuss more specifics on the numbers, we can.
I don't see how you can mess around with Elisa or Goldberger. Brian, the guy who does the labor. You can't screw with that. I mean, that's just the way it is. Isn't he on retainer?
No, he's not.
No, Goldberger's basically by the hours that he works. You could negotiate a better fee from him.
he's only a little bit more than Elise, right? And-
Yeah, he's not that high, really.
No,
No?
I-
He's been very kind to us.
Yeah, yes.
yeah, he's, once you get deep into police stuff, maybe we don't have to bring him in as often until we really, you go through a couple meetings and then bring Brian in, and you can try the best to sort of do what we can and sort of fact find and then run it by him, but,
He did a nice
it's
job in the two
essential.
cases we had. I think he did a nice
Yeah.
job.
No,
Sure.
then,
Yeah, we
attorney,
take that part.
Yeah.
attorney, you're gonna just have to leave alone.
We could have been floating down the river.
Gary, I did have a question. Central Garage,
Yes,
who is that salary?
it's a mechanic.
Just a mechanic?
Oh,
Cause it was,
I don't really know, to tell you the truth. I know the mechanics salaries.
well, cause I put the mechanic in central garage, but I put him only, and it became a $10,000 decrease from last year. But I have a feeling somebody else was in there, or we had two people in there. I don't know. I don't remember who was in there earlier. But I put the mechanic in central garage, and everybody else is in street maintenance.
What's he making this with the garage for?
Huh?
40,000?
40 and change, yeah.
They may have, at one time, they'd plugged a little money in there because of somebody helping in the garage, you know, they might have thrown,
A little bit more, okay. Yeah, because I'm just looking at the payroll, and it was almost 50 in 2014.
we had a difference in Walter's pay rate compared to what Stephen is now too.
Okay.
He was up to I think $23 an hour, where Stephen's at 18.
Okay.
Traffic control salary, what is that?
That's the,
Crossing.
that was the parking, I'm sure I took that out, didn't I?
Oh, no, that's still in.
Yep. Fine, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, on-street
No, that's-
parking. Traffic control is the guy who does the
Oh,
school.
crossing, okay.
Oh, okay.
Crossing guard. On-street parking I took out.
Okay.
Remember, we talked about, the equipment reserve for the fire department. That we have already set aside, 60,000 for equipment. You might want to consider not funding the reserve this year and just make sure you have that 65, and if you have to go to fund balance, if you don't get the grant, that might be a reasonable strategy there. Because right now,
We were talking about doing that.
we did talk about it last meeting.
For the
But-
SCBA's, I feel a little nervous about doing that for, the safety equipment.
Well,
We're
again,
not
I don't
getting
think
rid
you're
of it.
saying,
We're talking about if we don't get the grant,
pull
take
something
it out
else
of
in
fund
the
balance.
meantime. Take it out and then anticipate the bond, and if you don't get the grant, and if you don't get the grant,
Take it out of fund balance.
well, because my concern is that if you get the grant, you're gonna have a bunch of money sitting in that equipment, and it's gonna be allocated to that equipment, and you don't need it there.
So basically,
But
if
in
we,
talking to the fire department, we represented that if
Indeed,
there
it would be
was
there.
excess, it would go into the truck, the apparatus reserve. So they wouldn't, it wouldn't just go to the A fund, it would stay within the fire department.
oh, I don't remember that.
I do.
Okay.
Um,
Is that an unreasonable request, you think, that do it, or?
Well, in terms of someone like Eric working hard on getting the grant, if he's successful, he wanted to ensure that his efforts would still benefit the department.
well, it will, next time around, that's what Pat mentioned last time, didn't he?
Well, to Eric's credit, he said if you have to whittle anything out of the fire budget, the only area that does have wiggle room is the current reserve line.
Yeah, they put-
He did say that, but as long as we're in agreement that if the grant comes through, we bolster the reserve line later on.
Well, right now you've allocated $50,000 for reserve funds for the fire department. My question is, can you guys afford it?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We still don't know what the truck room rental is going to be. That's probably going to be at least a 1 to 2% impact.
We factored that in
It's
already.
changed,
though.
yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
I thought we agreed on the 1%.
But that's what we offered.
Nothing, they were gonna come
They were
back.
gonna get back.
Yeah,
And
come
it
back
was
to us.
1% plus
Paint or
Paint,
something.
yeah, the other
Take the
costs.
perhaps the reserve when everyone else is getting nickel and dime.
Say it again?
Yeah,
I don't know how we can eventually have 80 grand in a reserve when everyone else is getting nickel and dimed out. I don't know how you could justify
Well,
that.
actually, you're on track to have 95,000 in that reserve,
Okay.
if you leave these numbers alone.
And keep in mind how old the fire equipment is.
I
It's not gonna
understand
last
everything.
forever.
Yeah,
I understand that 100%. All our equipment's old, and it's not that we're taking money away. We're just hoping we get the grant. If we don't, we're just gonna pay for it with fund balance. Either way, you're still getting the apparatus.
Okay, just wanna make sure,
All it is
We're on the
making.
same
All it is letting us use less fund balance in the beginning of the budget. Because, like he said, if we get the grant, the money's just gonna sit there.
okay, here's what we agreed to. Eric said wiggle room in equipment reserve, but with the idea, that we're avoiding locking 40 or more thousand in equipment if the grant comes through. Board wants to be able to repurpose to apparatus reserve. That's what was discussed.
You're right, it was discussed by Eric when we discussed fire, but no one agreed, we didn't agree on anything.
the other thing you could do is don't put the full 45,000 that you allocated for this year's budget. Put a smaller amount, maybe 25,000. And that way what it'll do, because I think you have 15 in it now. I was looking, I don't know, I had the reserve fund sheet and it's not in here, so I'm assuming it was laying on the table and they just set it up. And otherwise I'll just try to get another printout. But I think you had 15,000 in the equipment reserve. Right now you've got 45,000 going into it. That's gonna give you 60. If you approve 35,000 this year, you're gonna have 95,000 in that reserve. If you get the grant, you're gonna lock that money. It'll only be available to transfer between reserve funds. I gotta look at that. I'm not positive it's permitted.
But you were also talking about, we put it in the budget, but we don't lock it in until the end of next fiscal year.
Yeah, but I'm still, again, I'm a little skeptical putting that much money away with an idea that the grant's coming, but most likely the grant's coming in. Because it will tie up money that could be used even for the equipment vehicle and engine. I think it'd be safer to put it in those areas than into the equipment that is very specific as to what you can spend that money on. So, maybe you do 25 and 25, and they'll give you 65,000 in that reserve after next year. And then if you don't get the grant, then you have to find the money out of the fund balance, but at least you're not tying it up in that reserve fund
Okay,
until lost forever.
As long as the record can show that if we don't get the grant, we take it out of fund balance.
Word.
Right,
As long
it's
as
just
the board
really,
understands
instead of
that.
putting 165 in fund balance to balance the budget, it's gonna be, how much less?
You'll drop, if you wanna do 25,
If we do that, yes.
then you'll have an additional 30,000, so you'll be
So we want 35, so it is still gonna be $30,000 sitting there in fund balance
Yeah,
to use for the SCBs.
we've got,
We're just waiting to use it,
no, I know,
hopefully
but
not.
we also tell Gary, no, he can't have a sweeper, no, he can't have a dump
Yeah.
truck, we told him,
That's
please
what I'm
get in a
saying.
car.
I agree.
Look, everybody's gotta feel the pain on this, and I don't think they're feeling it as bad as the other departments, I think, is my personal opinion.
Although, when you're dealing with an all-volunteer fire department that had, I think, 4 calls in one day,
Yeah.
Sunday,
Did
it's
I know.
harder to argue.
I know, I understand that too,
Yeah.
but the police were there also, I mean, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, you understand, we can't have like $1 million in here and $5 in this department, we have to kinda,
You have a
Everyone
hell
has
of a
to
lot better pension.
it's nothing, I'm
I'm
sorry.
I guarantee, yeah, I don't guarantee anything, but
I'm not
I'm thinking that,
being
you're right,
mean.
if they don't get the grant, it'll come out of the fund.
They're gonna get it either way,
Yeah.
I mean, it's important, SCBA has
Yeah,
been
no,
our most
no,
important thing.
Look, I'll tell you right now, you could borrow the money if you had to, because it's a safety, operational safety item, and it would be tenable to borrow it. It's easier to borrow money for something like that than it is to buy vehicles that you really should be putting money aside for. Remember, you guys are doing something that wasn't done before. You're actually doing reserve funds, and that's making it harder for you because you're trying to prepare for the future. You didn't inherit that. You inherited nothing, and you're having to basically do it from scratch. So,
You're not gonna have a choice in this one, because you're gonna,
Well, no, I think what we discussed at the time that Eric was in
You
is
just reminded me,
agreeable.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as we all
understand.
recognize that if the grant doesn't come through and we reduce the amount in
we have a
reserve,
commitment.
it comes out of another
Yeah.
pot.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we
that's,
go.
I agree.
yeah, I
That's
do
what
too.
we were
I
saying,
think what
like-
Anthony's saying though, if you're doing something with all the other departments and then you get say, well, wait a minute, how come you don't do it with that one department?
you know what I would do?
You know what I
Just thinking out loud here, I would go 20 on each, and then have the understanding if you don't get the grant, you'll have to consider borrowing the money.
As opposed to taking out of fund balance?
You can make that decision when you get a better fund
Then
balance.
we
Yeah, right, we get it back.
But it's
more
more
accurate reading.
tenable to borrow money for that type of equipment optically than it is to borrow money for trucks and stuff that you should have been saving for already. You know, it's just like,
But the money does.
nobody.
you get the
Either
money
way,
back.
the money's
Nobody goes crazy. A citizen doesn't go crazy if you have to paint the water tanks, right? They go crazy if you have to back pay for an attorney that didn't get the job done or something, or you had a lawsuit, or
The
you had
money goes
something
to-
else, okay?
Guys.
There's just some things borrowing money for are really not, like, good, you know? They
Yeah.
just don't go over well, they're not
From a
optically,
different fund.
right?
Yeah.
Or borrowed.
So I think that if you worked it that way and you put 20 and 20, that gives you 40 back toward your budget. It will give you 55,000 in the reserve fund. You could make up that difference, either through fund balance or borrowing the money. So there won't be a scenario where the fire department won't get their
Right.
stuff.
It's just different avenues that you're gonna get the money back on, right?
It's just gonna be a
It
little more
doesn't hurt,
expensive.
and it's not hurting the budget as much.
Yeah, it's gonna get a little more expensive to fund it, cause that money comes with an interest rate. But as we see, interest rates are still, below 2%.
I don't think we're gonna have to borrow. I feel it.
I hope you're right.
Can-
We're 2/3 of
Can
the
I
way
say
through.
something?
Sure.
Yes.
I would say within the next 4 to 5 years, you're gonna need, not counting the sweeper, probably $600,000 for equipment in
I
the street
don't-
department.
If we stay under the cap this year and they have a cap next year, it's gonna be virtually impossible going forward to.
Unless you borrow money.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't
It
know
seems
how
like
we're
that's
gonna
what
do
they want us to do.
Here's the way this is all gonna go, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
If they keep
that's-
the cap going, municipality's gonna borrow money until they get to a point where borrowing money becomes a
it.
negative.
Constitutional debt limit.
Yes, a negative
lift the
on
cap.
there, and then they'll have to break the cap.
Wouldn't you be better off to start to educate the public on the negative aspect of the cap now, so that next year you could go?
Gary, if they don't get their check, they don't care.
I don't know, you see more and more municipalities every year getting away from it.
Well, the other
Cornwall
thing,
just did it. I think people are starting to realize you just can't
It's
afford to go on like
Yeah,
this.
we're decimating things, quality of life, sidewalks, streets.
but the other
You just
side of
can't
this
do it.
is, if we, by next year, we'll know
Right.
what we're consolidating. If we exceed the tax cap
If
this
we're
year, then we
consolidating.
lose money from the state if we do
No, I'd like to do
consolidate.
our best to keep it under this year. I mean, my opinion,
Well, we're past the deadline.
Look,
We
I think
have
the
to.
board,
I think we're there.
I think the
Yeah.
board's got a couple more years that they can work on this. I think the state at some point will wake up and realize that they've gotta give relief to municipalities. that might come through a couple different scenarios. One would be that they would not put a tax cap for a short period of time, or they might basically tell municipalities, you will do shared services. If you don't, you will get penalized for not doing it.
Something's gotta change though, because we
Yeah.
can't, everybody can't be squeezed.
Every year.
I mean,
Yeah.
the fleets are getting older and
The
older.
state has like a huge amount of money right now in the consolidation fund, and it doesn't get used. Very little of it gets used. And I think the state's going to,
Dissolve, I hope, no.
I think the state is gonna push the issue, and they're going to force municipalities to do some shared services at a minimum.
Well, the other thing is, there are municipalities in the state who have been really egregious in building up excessive fund balances.
Yes.
Like 2 years
But that was
worth.
in the paper, now they're gonna put
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but
That's,
what,
that's not right either, though.
well,
But they're going after
but,
that.
but they did that right, they did that before the cap,
Right,
and now they're living on it.
Right,
So there's no
exactly,
pressure on
yeah.
them. You
But
guys,
they're gonna run out too.
you guys didn't inherit that
Yeah.
goodwill.
Well, yeah,
The
they-
town did when
they-
they had $1 million.
Their ratables
but-
were increasing, and ours were going the other way, so that, you can do
How'd
that
they
if
get
you,
$1 million?
you know, you got growth. you
Sure.
know.
Found a bunch of money. Well,
You found $1 million?
I didn't find it myself. Lack of audits determined that we had $1 million. I didn't know what we had when I took office, to be honest with you. I was worried we were gonna have not $1 million. I had no idea.
So where are we gonna go now on this version D? We all agreed to this with the fire department, right?
Can you explain it, what exactly you're doing there?
Okay, so, the reserve fund for this year will go down from 45 to 20,000. So that's column 3 on the reserve.
45 to 25?
Yeah, 45 to 20.
25.
The equipment reserve for this year's budget will go down to 20. That will give you a net 40,000 in fund balance relief. Well, it'll give you budget relief, which
Right.
means that you'll need less fund balance. So if you take that 40 and that 75, that gives you 115,000 off of the 228. So that puts you at 3115. So that says we need to find about $65,000 more dollars, or increase the fund balance by 65,000. Which will really be a net of 85,000 fund balance increase, which basically makes that number 150,000 appropriated fund balance.
You know, I know we can't do anything this year.
It'd be 150,000 to the fund balance, and that should put you at 3,050,000.
and that's $3,000
Yes.
under?
Woo-hoo!
Yeah, but there's still refining, so
Right,
it might
right,
be,
right, I know.
it might be 3,000 under, it might be 10,000 under, it might be 3,000 over, and we'll just have to clean it up after,
The audit.
after the public hearing.
But we're close.
That's what you wanna be. You don't have to be on the number. You have to be in a reasonable scenario where you can make sure you stay under the cap.
That senior citizen, that senior center. I know we can't do anything this year, but we gotta look at the town paying something into that. This is
I
insanity.
agree.
This is insanity. And, people, somebody told me there were people, when you guys were saying, don't take that on as a village thing.
Of course,
Good, because we need it.
protecting your interests.
You want,
We need this, usually.
that's not my point, my point
That's
is
why we did it,
always,
though. That's the only reason.
yeah, but
I agree.
It's a great idea, but we just can't afford it.
no,
As you can see, there's a lot of things we can afford, that they're actually the daily routine, the DPW stuff, to me, you know, hopefully we don't get a big water main break and then have to hire, because these things start to escalate, you know, the
Yeah.
guy's gotta bring in TAM or somebody like that to do these things that, normally we could do in-house, or,
But again, those things like water main breaks and so on, the reason why I'm saying use a contingency, because you wanna borrow the money all together. So your costs of borrowing are one time. Why do you think we consolidated all of our borrowing to one day? Okay, we have one
Rates.
closing now, okay?
Right.
We have one financial statement that's to be put together. There is one, bond offering. So you're saving, 10 grand in fees by keeping it all consolidated. So let's say you do have a water main break, we pay for it, and then we make a determination in borrowing that we consider borrowing for it. There's a certain period of time, that has to, you can't necessarily borrow after the fact, so that if you have the problem, you have to initiate the borrowing in a period of time that's considered reasonable. But that gives you the flexibility where you can take care of it, but then yet, water main break, borrowing money for the sewer water fund is not a problem, because those funds are above water. So that's not an issue. It's really and remember, you have a contingency of $75,000 in the A fund. Okay, so if you don't use that contingency, then this 150 donation becomes 75.
And you think we're in good shape this year as far as overtime?
You mean this current fiscal year?
The one we're budgeting for now.
Oh, we're budgeting
16,
for it? Well,
17.
again, I plussed up police to 45. I don't agree with it, but that's not my decision, it's your decision.
Well, going back to what Gary said a couple minutes ago, with the equipment needs that are bearing down on us to the tune of 600,000 was what Gary quoted. That kind of huge nut, are we looking at bonding the equipment next year?
You could consider it.
I don't think there's any way around it, I mean,
You're gonna need 3 more police cars in the next 5 years too.
well, at least another one next
Well,
year.
it's provided you have police department, right?
Sure.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah, we've
That's
been
the-
trying to budget for,
Right.
See, that's the other thing is that you do need to be careful in the areas that you are considering consolidation, because you don't want to buy all those assets and then end up just
Have all
having
the
to turn
chips
them
on your
over.
table, yeah.
You'd be better off buying the assets for like Public Works, because that's not right at the front page as far as, the consolidation scenario. So I would be very careful about
Good
police
point.
services equipment.
Yeah.
Remember, the police department is 40% of your A fund.
yeah,
40%.
It's normal. Normal everywhere.
Right.
It's the problem.
I'm just saying,
And Clarkstown just had a big issue with that too. That's the highest percentage
I'm
of the
sure it's
budget.
more than 40.
how does it work out in the town? What percentage is police of the town budget?
police, I'm waiting to get a copy of that budget.
They're all
Well,
part-time.
they're mostly
But it's
part-time,
last,
so
it's
not double.
part-time. I think, if I remember right, when I left, the police department was, I wanna say around 600,000 or 800,000, including the communications towers and all that stuff. I have last year's actually.
Oh, it's okay,
I don't
it's
think so.
just,
Their budget is online. Their
Is it?
budget's
They are putting it
on
on?
their website.
I'll give you last year's number.
Is that right? You sure it's not 10?
I said, Gina made me sad.
He's gotta go to work.
Oh,
What time you gotta go to work?
2.
2 o'clock.
2 AM?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So when?
3 tomorrow afternoon.
Easy on.
So you won't sleep tonight?
No, I'll go home and sleep for like 2 hours. Hopefully, if we get out of here.
Well, are we ready to go into exec to take care of that personnel issue?
Police department is 570,000.
What's that? That's last year?
Yeah, and then with the tower, Tower costs, public safety, part-town. I wanna say it's maybe they're at 650. If you include benefits and some other stuff there, maybe they're at 700. So they're at 700 for a 5 million, I think it's $5 million budget. $4 million budget. Cause you remember, they have part-town, the AB fund, they have a lot of stuff. So they're maybe 20%, 15% of the overall budget,
What's ours?
40.
40.
That's because of the benefits.
Yeah,
Keep it around.
full-time.
Yeah.
You know, the town's police chief is 30K, or 35K.
I think
But
he's
it's
capped
part-time.
at 30.
Yeah, he's capped at 30, he's part-time.
Yes, yeah, it's, yeah.
Now, the town is 1/3 the size of the village. Village is 2/3. Village is a more urban area than the town. You know, so you have to factor some of that in. I don't think it's apples to apples.
No.
But as Anthony says, the benefits
Just
are
double
second to none. So, all right, so I just want to quickly flip, make sure there's nothing else that you guys see that you want me to consider. Right now, what I plussed in is 150 to the fund balance, trucks off the table, reserve funds for fire department equipment have been changed and lowered. All of the salaries are including a 1%.
And hopefully we get this LED project off the road and running, and that 90 grand we have for street lighting could be shaved down some.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think I put it at 95
We
or
did,
90.
190.
Okay. Everything else like state retirement, PFRS, LoSAP, those are all fixed numbers.
Yep.
I do have to, there is one thing I still have to just do a little bit more work on, and that is the health insurance number. I gotta factor in a percentage increase, I'm gonna probably use 5%.
The health insurance increase?
Yeah, new rates are pending, so I'll have to go with the rates that we're at now, plus a little bit. So that's gonna change a little bit there. And what I'll do is if that changes materially enough, I will adjust the fund balance accordingly. Again, after the public hearing, you can change the budget, okay? It's not gonna be drastic though, you might make a swing of 50K. But at least with the tentative budget, it gives the public a chance to review your allocations. Maybe you get a question, maybe you don't. You know, I will say this, I'm finding that less people come to public hearings because they know the cap exists. So they know that there's no big surprises if the cap hasn't been overridden. So a lot of people kind of check out and they don't really pay that much attention. But, you know, you never know. Okay, so that's all A fund. Water fund, as I mentioned, I set 100,000 contingency for water main break and or something else that's major costs. And I've upped the principal for the water meter ban up to about 105,000. So we're gonna really increase the payment. I think our minimum for that is 35,000, that's per the schedule. But I recommend that we accelerate those payments, so that, you guys end up with less, debt. Yeah, 35, the water tanks are 35 for one, 45 for the other. So that's a total of 80,000. We'll plus it up another 25.
So That's the 104,000,
Yes.
okay?
And then the sewer department is programmed for 35,000. But we're gonna put probably,
Got 254,000?
250.
Okay, so we're rounding down,
We got the sewer?
yeah.
Oh,
Your sewer fund is your strongest fund. Hands down.
that doesn't affect the budget,
Right here?
really.
Yeah,
It doesn't want.
So what did it make it?
250.
No, your
More
budget's,
than that.
your budget's balanced.
Right.
The only other scenario that I would have is that, you could make it contingency, but I think that's way too big of a contingency fund. I think your contingency fund at 100,000 is reasonable. Remember your sewer factor at 1.85,
Mhm.
so if the water rates go up, your sewer rates almost go up twice.
And we could probably do that gas furnace with the contingencies, isn't that, you said that earlier?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
You could,
Going forward.
you could consider,
Yeah.
sewer fund has got potential. Okay? So I'll clean this all up. I will have, a tentative budget that I will give to Gina by Monday the 21st. I'm gonna hope to get it to her for Friday, but we do have the weekend, and, if there's anything, anybody looks, please take these and look at them a little bit more if you get a chance, see if there's anything else that, interests you in it. And then that has to be then presented, Gina has to present it to you by the end of the month,
Did he change this?
Well, I'm hoping that Monday you can do it at the
No,
board
it's gonna
meeting.
at the board meeting.
Okay.
You know, they can,
Just give it to them right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be a memo that just as you've been giving your
Yep.
tentative budget. It's
So
not
you
a big
should-
ceremony, right?
You should expect, then you'd expect you'll have the tentative next Monday. And then our public hearing is set for the first meeting in April, which
Well, they can do that at the meeting too, Pat,
Yeah.
and make sure he announces the.
announced to set your public
set
hearing
the
for the
public
budget.
hearing, April 4th is the first Monday
so
in
20.
April.
Oh, wait, here's yours.
And usually you have your reorg meeting and your
It's gonna be-
tentative and your regular board meeting.
So we all set?
So you're not gonna need another budget meeting.
Unless the board wants one.
No.
I don't think so.
If anything comes up while I'm crunching these numbers that
Okay, we'll have it. Okay.
is that I'm not aware of or whatever, I'll contact you. What I will do, if there's anything that ends up, let's say a cell is wrong or there's some type of mathematical issue, I will utilize the fund balance and then we can clean it up in a discussion after the public hearing.
Okay.
But pretty much figure you're probably gonna be looking
How many
at
people come to public hearing?
a fund balance of about 150,000.
And how much did we use this year?
205.
So use us.
But again, the goal is to use zero.
Yeah, we've been going down every year.
Yes.
Thanks for your hard work on this
Well,
stuff.
You're welcome.
Well, and
One day.
some
Good
departments
job.
Yeah,
have
I could never do that.
brought
so.
in stable or below.
As crazy as it sounds, I like doing this.
I know. You said that and
It's a
and I agree.
crazy,
It does sound
crazy issue.
That's all right. All right, so, can we go into executive session? Okay, a motion?
I make a motion to go to executive session.
For personnel.
For personnel, it's personnel.
Specifically. Second.
I'm gonna get him on the
Aye.
side.
Thanks, Gary.
You got 16 hours?
Gary, thanks for being here to talk about it. Did you have
I
anything
gotta go
else?
back to work.